Thanks for joining us. I guess we'll just get right into it. I know that Carlina from your office had just sent over something, so I guess we'll start here. And this is breaking right here on the link, guys. Law enforcement agencies adopt first-time uniform policy for independent investigation of use of deadly force by officers. This release just coming out minutes ago from the Attorney General's office. AG, you care to elaborate?
Yeah, sure, Christine. This is something that's been in the works now. I believe we circulated a draft, and this is just in response to, kind of asking a question with some of the officer-involved incidents. What are the processes? What are the procedures that are in place? And we consulted with GPD, Chief Ignacio over there, and we realized there was nothing in writing. So kind of informally, there was an agreement with GPD, how they would do things. And then we started asking about other law enforcement agencies. So what would happen if an airport police officer was involved in a use of force incident that resulted in death or serious physical injury? And again, there was nothing uniform. So we kind of worked together to put together this draft MOU. We circulated it in May, and we were able to get together this past Wednesday. And for the first time, we've adopted a uniform process. And we were able to get the Department of Corrections, Department of Youth Affairs, Port Authority of Guam was represented. The Guam International Airport Authority was also there as well. So most, if not all, of our local law enforcement partners, Department of Agriculture, don't want to leave them out, have signed off and agreed to this framework. So if there is an incident, they will provide immediate notification to our office and to GPD to handle the investigation at that point. So I think it's a pretty solid first step. And it blends in nicely with, we have use of force, policy is not going to change practice. So one of the things, again, that we've been working with GPD on is de-escalation training and updating our process here and our training, what's available in our tools that were given to law enforcement officers. Last 2 weeks, we've sent people to North Dakota and to Tennessee to get training on this ICAT method, which is de-escalation training. It's a day and a half and train the trainer session. So we now have added 4 trainers who are certified in Guam to conduct this de-escalation training. We're working very closely with Chief. I believe he's going to roll that out with the current cadets at the police academy. And then we're going to look at getting police post-certification so that it will be a training that will be available for all law enforcement. And again, we recognize that there was an issue, something we could do better, and we're trying to move things as quickly as can. And again, it's the first time that we've been working with GPD to develop. And the last piece of it is going to be the actual draft use of force policy. So we've started on that. We are in revisions with Guam Police Department at this point. And the idea is going to be the same thing with the independent investigative team, where we will have a single use of force policy with principles that can be adopted across all local law enforcement agencies. They can tailor their SOPs kind of based on lethal and non-lethal weapons that they provide to their officers, but the public will know kind of what the framework is, when is this going to be authorized. Chokeholds, as an example. I believe that the draft that we have is in line with the Department of Justice, which is you can only use a chokehold if deadly force would be authorized, nothing short of that. So that's what we're working on, and we're hoping to get that out actually and available to the public for review and comment, and potentially hold a roundtable on that or a public hearing on that within the next few months. So that's what we got going on. I know Chief has been really busy, and his team has been pretty great. Just some of the cold cases, and you wanted to talk about autopsies. I think 3 were done last weekend. We have another one that's tentatively scheduled for next weekend. So we're on that. We also have a post-mortem commission meeting, hopefully within the next week or 2. We've selected a candidate. We've met with the candidate to discuss kind of where they are at from a salary perspective and benefits perspective. And we're going to present those discussions to the commission as a whole. And, again, hopefully get that done and find a long-term solution, because we've been able to kind of work with Dr. Abe, Dr. Dotterman from the NMI to handle the non-forensic, and as well as flying in our Hawaii forensic pathologists. Typically, once every, they can get in within 2 weeks, but we are working very hard to have a long-term solution to the issue of chief medical examiner.
Just real quickly, what does ICAT stand for?
I will give you the exact definition of it. It's like, you can ask me something like that. It's a training, and I'll tell you the way that we've learned about this is that New Jersey has rolled this out, and it's mandated in many states to have all of their law enforcement officers complete a 2-day training. It is the Integrating Communications Assessment and Tactics. That's the name of the program. And it's really geared towards an encounter between law enforcement and someone who is either having mental health issues or in a crisis and is armed with anything other than a firearm. So a knife, just kind of acting erratically. And what they teach them, I believe there's a tactical component where you have two officers who are responding. You have one who's there to talk them through. And instead of meeting force with force, to try to get them to calm down and to cooperate with law enforcement. So statistically, and they've done research on this already, it's been adopted in several jurisdictions. There was a 28% reduction in use of force incidents, I want to say in Louisville, a 26% decline in citizen injuries, and a 36% reduction in officer injuries. So across the board, you're seeing less use of force and also less injuries to both citizens and police officers. So it really is, it's a twofer. You get safer interactions, and it benefits both our law enforcement and the community that they're interacting with.
Nice.
Is that training, do they get certified after receiving that training, and is that go through like an annual certification?
So that's exactly, we had folks fly out to do a train the trainer session, and we now have 3 GPD officers who are certified to conduct that training on Guam. And one of our investigators also went out and is now certified. In terms of renewal, we wanted to get it done first, and we can talk about the renewal at that if and when it comes up. But I think we've added quite a number of officers who now are trained. And again, we talked to Chief, and they want to try it out with the cadets who are currently going through the academy. It's a full day and a half, and they run through scenarios. I got a very quick briefing on it, and they actually use body cam footage taken from real cases, and they walk through scenarios, what you could have done differently to avoid a deadly confrontation. We can provide you with the website. It was developed by PERF. Gosh, you're going to ask me for an acronym as well. I know it's, let me see here. It's a big national law enforcement entity, and they developed this after years, and they received comments from the Police Executive Research Forum, is who's developed and who runs this training.
AG, it sounds like a pretty great deal, but I wanted to ask, like, how late are we on this? Because I know in other jurisdictions they've had de-escalation procedures in play. I mean, you read about it all the time, right?
Well, there's de-escalation training that's available, but we're actually, when our trainer or our folks went out to North Dakota, they're just rolling it out there. Okay. And they're train the trainer sessions, so they're getting their folks trained up to then go out to the precincts. The benefit that we have, as opposed to New Jersey with 38,000 officers to train, I believe, including GPD and all the other entities that have signed on to this IIT, we're looking 400 or 500 people. So, the rollout should happen a lot quicker once we get a formal curriculum in place. So we're not far behind, Chris, especially for these newer techniques.
What about for the uniform use of force policy? When you came into office, and because I know there was a chain of events that kind of led to this whole situation that we're in now, but were you surprised that there wasn't an existing uniform policy for all the law enforcement?
I mean, it's hard to really say that's just the way it's been done, Chris. We have decades of practice, and we have to be open to it. And I do want to recognize Chief Ignacio for being open to just doing things differently. And I will tell you, we didn't formalize the IIT, but we did that investigation, and we handled things very differently than we typically would have any type of criminal investigation. And I've shared this with you guys that we can't no comment our way through these investigations any longer. So we have to kind of meet people where they're at. But Chief has been very open to looking at things. And what we are figuring out is that, we kind of a mixed use of force policy with SOPs. And there's been a reluctance to broadcast the exact SOP. Okay, this is the weapons that we're going to be giving to our patrol guys. This is what is going to be authorized under these specific circumstances. And we've come up with this, I don't want to say compromise, but basically there are certain principles that should apply no matter what. Proportionality, as an example. You should only use the force, meet it with what is being given to you, right? That's not something that you have to have a very detailed SOP. When it comes to de-escalation, and that being the first step, and you have to exhaust that before you move to the next tier up. That's been part of the policies, but then it's kind of, you're memorizing as part of the GOs, probably hundreds of pages, right? So what we've also done with this is try to simplify to very basic concepts so that we can train much easier and get people on board versus here's 500 GOs, go out and memorize everything. And then you're expected to remember out on the street, okay, under this circumstance, what am I allowed to do? So proportionality, whatever they're coming at you with, that's kind of what you can do, but you have to try to de-escalate first. The other things that will be interesting would be, pursuit policy. That's going to be one that we're working to figure out kind of uniform what happens for low-level and traffic infractions that may end up now in a high-speed chase, and whether you weigh public safety versus the offense that's being committed. So I think we're going to have some very robust discussion on that because our law enforcement, they're out there to catch the bad guys and people who are breaking the law. So if we get to the point where you see someone with expired tags, don't engage in a high-speed chase, it's going to be a bit of a culture shift, but I think that's kind of the risk that you're putting everybody in the community at, and engaging in a high-speed chase for expired tags is just not worth it, right? That's where we have to re-engage. So it's exciting though. I mean, I think it's good for us we're often detached from what's happening nationally, but this affects us locally. And you don't want to have to wait for something tragic to happen before we make changes. We want to be more proactive if we can.
You mentioned body cam. Can you kind of talk a little bit more about that? Are police officers allowed currently to wear body cams? I know there was a case, I think it was the Mark Torrey case. There was a police officer that had a body cam. And I think it was one of the reasons why it had to be retried. But are police officers
there's been efforts, Bree, to get body cameras out there. I think the biggest issue is not the equipment itself, it's the storage. And this is not unique to Guam, where you're going to end up spending maybe, I don't know, I'm going to just throw 25 to 50,000 out there for the cameras themselves, but up to $250,000 a year on the storage itself. And then you have the criminal component. So I think it's just identifying where the funds are going to come. And those are discussions we are also having with Chief Ignacio to see what we can do as an office. There's federal grant. If there are federal funds available, we want to be able to support that, because I think a lot of times body-worn cameras are going to help us versus kind of what we're at before. Anecdotally, this is what happened. This is what they said. This is what I said. So there's been a movement. I talked to Chief and see, but my understanding in my discussions with him, he's open to it and has been advocating for it to be available, but it's just finding that money to store the footage.
The other thing you mentioned was the medical examiner, and getting close, hopefully, to finally bringing one on board to fill the vacancy left by Dr. Aurelio Espinola. So I know you can't really disclose, salary and things like that, but where are we in terms of the candidate securing licensure to practice on Guam? Because I think it was Dr. Taitano in one of the meetings that says, it's kind of a long process to get licensure to practice here on island. Has that already started? Once
I guess the ink is the documents are signed, the contract is signed, then part of it would be making sure that there's going to be the licensing process. So we've had to do temporary for the forensic pathologists that have flown out, and the governor's office has been very good, and the boards have been very good about pushing that because they understand and recognize the need to have a forensic pathologist. So we're just kind of taking it one step at a time, acknowledging that it's going to take a bit to get the licensure done, but we'll do. Everyone's on board to expedite as much as we can to get it done as quickly as possible.
And so you mentioned that there were some autopsies that were completed over the past weekend, and there was one that is scheduled for this weekend. Which case is it for this weekend?
Oh, sorry, I cut out, guys. I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
You mentioned that there were some autopsies that were completed over the past weekend. Which autopsy are you referring to? Which case for this weekend's autopsy?
I don't know the specifics. I just know that we've contacted Dr. Ishikawa to come out next weekend to conduct. Sometimes we'll schedule him to come out, and then things happen, and he'll go from doing one planned autopsy to doing 3, which I think may have happened this past weekend. So I just know that we can expect him to come out.
Okay.
Not this Sunday, but next Saturday. Okay.
And also, over I think it was 2 days ago, a really big case. Is something that you've been working on. You actually co-led the front of the court brief for the Vallejo Madero case before the United States Supreme Court. What was your, I guess, your perspective or your reaction to the hearing, the oral argument?
It's really hard to say where the justices are going to go. I know that Justice Gorsuch talked about just overruling outright the ancillary cases, and you don't know. He was the only one really on the court at that point who was making those types of comments. Obviously, Justice Sotomayor, with her ties to Puerto Rico, was the most active, I would say, of all the justices, and I thought she made some very solid points as to why. The common refrain is, well, we don't pay federal income tax. And she kind of pointed out people often cherry pick, right? Oh, we don't pay federal income taxes, but there are all kinds of other federal taxes that are generated and paid for things that are related to Guam activities. And they may not be paying taxes in Guam, but maybe we're not capturing it. But to say that there's no federal revenue generated is just not inaccurate. I believe Puerto Rico actually generates more federal tax revenue, not including excluding federal tax than like 12 states, something like that. So we'll see. I know there's some efforts to change the statute itself, and that would be fantastic because there are thousands of blind, elderly, and disabled people in Guam who would greatly benefit from this. General Racine from DC kind of knows what it's like to be a non-state. So we've been very fortunate to work with him on the amicus. And then on Tuesday as well, we co-authored a editorial that was published in the USA Today. We don't get USA Today in Guam, again, the irony. But it's nice to see other kind of partners amplifying the issues that we're having to deal with territories. And we pointed out SSI is given to the NMI, but then they get denied SNAP, right? So across the board, it's kind of like pulling names out of a hat, which territories get different federal benefit programs, and it's completely arbitrary.
AG, I wanted to ask about the Education Stabilization Fund grants. I know that in August, the governor's office had come out with a release saying that they awarded, it was a large amount of money. But then when we followed up, we found out that none of these nonprofits and different organizations have received any of the funding. We were told they were awarded because they're waiting on MOUs from the AG's office. Is that accurate?
So it's the famous "it's at the AG's office," right, Chris?
Yeah, they're always throwing you under the bus.
It's always at the AG's office.
Check the AG, man. I don't know the AG.
Yeah. It's always at the AG. I will tell you that we received it, and it's not always. There's steps before we get it. We're the second to last signature on these documents, so they still have to go through the financial side. BDMR, DOA has to look at it. We've been in contact with the governor's office on these, and we want them to be awarded, but we also have to make sure they're going to follow all the applicable laws. And I know following the law can delay things, but that's literally our job in these circumstances. So we're aware of it, we're tracking, and we're going to move this as quickly as we can. Again, once we get all the information, we have no problem having things proceed.
Right on. And also, did you have any update at all on the high-intensity drug trafficking area designation? I know that our application was denied. Then last time we spoke on this, I want to say that you had talked about combining efforts with Hawaii, right?
So the initial application that we filed last year was with the NMI to join the Hawaii HIDA program. Okay. And we still have remained in contact with Hawaii HIDA, as well as the Northern Mariana Islands, with the intention of reapplying probably early next year. We also noted that the national trend has really placed a large emphasis on opioids. So one of the things that we've done, and we've talked about this, we've allocated some of the money we secured through our McKinsey settlement to build better stats on what the opioid problem looks like in Guam. Senator Shelton had introduced a bill to create a trust fund for any future opioid settlements that we receive. And that's exactly, again, kind of building out these partnerships, building out better data, and demonstrating that we're doing our part in Guam to address not only opioid use disorder, but co-occurring substance abuse issues. So the plan is early next year, Chris. We will plan on resubmitting with NMI to join Hawaii HIDA. And I just want to throw out there that it's to formalize the process, but we're not sitting on our hands. We are currently working with our federal law enforcement partners. We are engaging with Hawaii on some of these issues that we kind of see this triangle between Hawaii, Guam, and the NMI. So we're doing what we can in the absence of a formal agreement to work closely with our federal partners.
AG, so when you talk about you're right, the trend nationally is a lot of discussion about opioids, but locally, I mean, without any real data, I guess, what's your read on it? Because it kind of seems like we are seeing more of the opioids, but like meth, just from what we see on the news, seems to be still like the prevailing drug.
Well, one of the key things that was part of Senator Shelton's bill is that it could be used for opioid use disorder or any co-occurring substance abuse or mental health issues. And we had a press conference with some of the direct service providers from Lighthouse Recovery and Oasis. And they shed some light on this, that oftentimes people will go back and forth between opioids and meth. And it's very, you can't track it, right? Opioids are legal. So there's no way for us to say, okay, this prescription is not being given for the right reason, or that prescription is getting into the wrong hands. But I believe that I don't know the stat offhand, but it was a significant increase in the number of people that our direct service providers are seeing who are suffering from opioid use disorder specifically. And again, they're seeing more frequent occurrences of this cross, polydrug types of issues. So the funds that we've secured, and I want to be very clear on this, will be able to help those who are struggling with ice addiction that is co-occurring with what you would see someone struggling with addiction issues and opioids. So it's not going to be limited only opioid use disorder. Anything that is co-occurring would be entitled to funding and resources.
Wow, because you do see that in some of these arrests where it'll be like they get busted with not just like pills and all that, but also meth, right? So it's very interesting. Anything in closing, AG, that you wanted to throw out there before we let you go?
Happy Veterans Day. I know we're a day late, and as you know, I'm very awkward. And my dad was in the Army, so we had to move and I had to make friends every 2 to 3 years. So I know what it's like for both those who are serving and having to relocate and have to move your family every 3 years. So just happy Veterans Day to all those who serve.
Thank you, AG.
Thanks, Chris.
All right. There you go, Attorney General Leevin Camacho. Let's take a quick break, and we're coming back with more of The Link next. Good morning. It's Friday.
We all know that a healthy lifestyle is important to prevent chronic diseases and long-term illnesses and boost mental health. It's difficult to determine exactly which healthy habits are worth investing in to live longer and healthier lives. But FHP is here to help. Tune into The Link every Tuesday for FHP Hoffa Health Tips, brought to you by